On one hand, you look into your partner's eyes and you see the person you've loved for years, the person who helps with the kids, who shows up for work every day, and who seems to be fully integrated in your shared life. But then you discover the secret life and your world implodes. It turns out they've been looking at porn for years, right under your nose.
And then the question that almost every betrayed partner asks is how? Like, how could they look me in the eye and act like everything was normal? How could they be a devoted father or a respected professional and still have this other hidden world? And so today we're unpacking the secret architecture of the addict's mind. We're exploring the psychology of compartmentalization, and we'll show you exactly why this happens and what it takes to dismantle those walls.
So to start our conversation today, we need to define what we actually mean by compartmentalization, this massive word.
Yes.
So in a clinical sense, compartmentalization is a defense mechanism where the brain creates invisible mental barriers. Often we call this splitting because there is a split between two realities, the outward life and the secret life. And these barriers separate conflicting thoughts or behaviors into different parts of the mind. Now, all of us use a healthy version of this. So for example, when you're at work and you need to put your family stress aside to just focus on a project, get stuff done, be fully present in a meeting. That's a good use of the brain's ability to compartmentalize. So usually it is a useful way for your mind to organize these tasks so that you can be productive.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But then for the porn addict, this process becomes like pathological. It's no longer about focus or productivity. It becomes a tool for survival with an addiction and a family. And it allows the addict to engage in behaviors that would normally cause them immense guilt or shame without that guilt spilling over into their daily life and disabling their functioning there. So it's like they have this high security server room in their head where one server runs the family life and another server runs the addiction. And they have this massive firewall between the two so that the systems never crash into each other. And don't get me wrong, we're not saying that this is a good thing. We're just explaining how this compartmentalizing can be so powerful.
Yeah. And that's why as a partner, you feel so blindsided from the whole thing, because from your perspective, those two lives are completely incompatible. Like you may think if he loved me, he couldn't do this. But in the addict's compartmentalized mind, love and porn exist in different rooms. They don't have to reconcile the two because they try to never let them be in the same space at the same time. And yes, they're lying to you and there's no excuse for that. But this splitting is so powerful that some of those lies might have even felt factual to their outside self. So really they're lying to themselves as well. That's how powerful this splitting can be.
Yeah. And you can also think about this like different boxes. Like your spouse might have a work box and they might have a social box. They have a husband box, and then tucked away in a dark corner is the addiction box. And when they're in their husband box, they're genuinely acting as a husband. They're not necessarily faking their affection in that moment because they're literally in that mental state. And what they feel for you there is genuine. But as soon as they feel dysregulated in their emotions, if there's a significant stress or loneliness, they step out of that box and they open the addiction box.
And that's a crucial point for you to understand if you're a partner. Many partners feel like their entire relationship, once they've discovered what was going on, was a lie from the start to the finish. But because of this box system, the addict often feels like their time with you was real while it was happening. The reality is there is a parallel truth and lie. These things were happening on twin rails. But the problem is that the addiction box is sealed off from the rest of the world. So when they're in that space, your values and your feelings don't appear on their radar. And I know that's very hard to hear. That's how this splitting and compartmentalization functions, though. The addict is not thinking about the consequences because those consequences are stored in a different box that is currently closed and locked. But out of that box, what they feel for you is usually genuine.
Yeah, it's almost like a light switch. When the switch is off for the addiction box, they might be the most helpful, compassionate person that you know. But when that switch flips on, They enter a different state of being entirely. And we often hear addicts say in our office, like, I don't know who that person was when I was using, or it's like my brain or my body was hijacked. And this is because the compartmentalization is so strong that they feel like a stranger to themselves once they step back into their normal life and close that lid.
Indeed, yeah. And again, like
go ahead.
We call this splitting. It's a way of managing the cognitive dissonance, another term. So cognitive dissonance is that uncomfortable feeling that you get when your actions don't match your values or when two things in your brain don't line up. So if a man believes he's a good person and a loyal husband, but he is also using porn in a way that violates his marriage, that creates a massive internal conflict for almost all men and women. Since a person can't live with that much conflict, they have to compartmentalize to keep things separate so that they can function in life. It's horrible for you, but it was at some level usually about survival for them, just keeping these two things pieced separately.
Yeah, like a psychological shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Instead of changing the behavior, they just change the way they store the information, if that makes sense. Like they tell themselves things like, this is my private issue, or this doesn't affect my family because they never see it. And by telling themselves these lies, they can maintain their self-image as a good guy or a good person while continuing the addiction. But this splitting leads to a profound emotional disconnect where they stop being able to integrate their emotions across the different areas of their life.
And for you as the partner, this may show up like a shortage or even a total lack of empathy. When you confront an addict and they seem cold or defensive, it's often because they're trying to keep that addiction box closed and very separate from their outward life that you've been a part of. If they let your pain into the box, then the whole system collapses and they would have to face the full weight of what they've done. So they double down on the barriers. They get angry or they gaslight you because they're desperately trying to protect the internal walls they have built to keep themselves from this fear of falling apart emotionally. At some subconscious level, they really believe that if they lose this crutch that they've been leaning on, they're not even sure how they're going to survive. That's how desperate the feeling is. And I don't think we've said this yet, but we're not making excuses for this here, but just rather giving an understanding of like how the mechanisms here actually operate.
Yeah. It's like a prison of the mind. I think we mentioned that earlier. Like this is a powerful way to understand why addicts stay stuck in this cycle. So imagine a person who lives in a beautiful house with their family, but beneath that house, they've built like a secret underground bunker. And over time, they spend more and more time in that bunker. And they bring things down there, they hide secrets there, and eventually the bunker becomes a prison. Like they want to come up for fresh air and sunlight, but they're terrified of what will happen if they do.
The addict feels like they can never let you into that bunker because if you saw what was down there, you would leave immediately. But at the same time, the addict feels lonely and isolated in that dark space. They want to be known and they want to be loved, but they're terrified of that exact thing. They're terrified of being truly seen. And this is the irony of compartmentalization. It's built to protect the addict from shame, but it ends up isolating them in a mental fortress where no one can reach them.
Yeah. And this is why we talk about recovery as integration. Like it's about bringing the contents of the bunker up into the main house for the first time. It's about having like one single life where everything is visible. And it's terrifying for the addict because they've spent years believing that their system depends on these walls, on these separations. But genuine intimacy is impossible as long as those walls are standing. Like you simply cannot be fully loved if you're only partially known. But this is such a huge dilemma though, because vulnerability and surrender are the opposite of addictive behaviors. It seems to them to be profoundly risky to make that switch, even though you've wanted to connect with them in that way for years. Just so scary.
So scary, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, like, I don't know if I need to keep saying this, but we're not trying to invite pity for them, but just the compassion of understanding how stuck this feels. without in any way minimizing the impact of the pain on you, that there's a whole separate part to this person that you thought you knew all of them, right?
Yeah. And even to answer the question of like if they loved me, they wouldn't do that.
Right.
So we're just trying to show like both of those things can be real because they're so split.
They're so split. Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to talk about a concept now that we call like the reality gap. So this is the massive difference between how the addict sees their behavior in the fog and how you experience it as a partner. So let's look at the addict's perspective first. In the fog, the addict often views porn as a victimless or just a private outlet. They think it's just for them. It doesn't hurt anyone because they're keeping it separate and they're doing a good job of that. And that's not true, obviously. And your reality as the partner is that you view porn as a profound violation of the trust and intimacy in the marriage. And of course you would. It feels like a third party has been brought into the most private areas of your life.
Yeah. And the addict also believes that their secrecy is actually protecting you from pain. And they'll even tell themselves, well, I'm not telling them because it would just hurt her. But the reality is But the reality you live in is that the secret life is actually the very thing creating the barrier to true connection. Mm-hmm. Like you can feel the distance and the gap, even if you don't know the reason behind it. So the secret itself is the vacuum in the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the splitting is still real and felt, even though the addict might think it's working to keep everything separate.
Yeah, and the betrayed partner doesn't know what the split is.
No, true. Which is why so many people like question around different things or check in and stuff and don't have an answer. And then in one way, when this thing finally comes to life, it fills that knowledge gap or that reality gap. It makes sense, but it's also very devastating.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Another big part of the gap is like the self-image. So the addict uses his mental boxes to suppress his own guilt and maintain his image as a good guy in whatever context usually that matters for him. He really wants to be that good guy. But as a partner, you experience that good guy image now that you know the truth as a form of gaslighting. It feels like manipulation because you're being shown a version of him that isn't the whole truth. And that can even make you question your own intuition. Like, what was I trusting or how did I miss this?
Yeah. And then the addict will also minimize their behavior by saying like, oh, it's harmless. It's just a way to relieve stress. And they truly think they have everything under control. But for you, this is a complete betrayal of trust. Mm-hmm. Like something's felt off for you for a long time. And maybe even when they're insisting that everything's fine. And if you're watching this and you're feeling that dissonance, we want to hear from you. Like if you're comfortable sharing in the comments, what has been the most challenging part of realizing your partner lived a compartmentalized life? Like your reflections help us keep this conversation grounded and real.
So let's talk about how we fix this.
Yeah. Can we pause for a sec? Because I think you are so onto something because you've said it 3 times. Like, well, I don't want to keep going back to this, but we're not excusing their behavior.
Right.
And I think I sound like I'm excusing their behavior.
You're worried about you coming across that way?
Yeah.
Okay. So
because
just,
it is their choice. And maybe
to compartmentalize,
to hide, to have the addiction, to do that behavior. And yes, maybe it's an addiction now and they can't stop.
Yeah.
But it's also their choice not to get help.
Yeah.
Right? So in
honest.
no way am I sitting here like, oh, the poor person. It's like, no, they've made those choices and those choices are hurting them and you.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to give you a little framework maybe for understanding it. A little window of understanding.
Yeah.
No.
Rest assured, like our approach is compassion and accountability.
Yeah, absolutely.
That the two have to come in to go hand in hand. And honesty and transparency is a vital, essential step for them to take. They cannot get into sobriety and you cannot feel safe in your relationship until they're fully transparent and honest.
Yeah.
So that is the invitation. But we are trying to answer this large question of like, well,
now what? What do we do with it?
Why did this happen initially? But yeah.
Oh yeah. And
now what do we do?
Now what do we do with it? How do we fix it?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
So
I'll get off my soapbox.
No, it's good. Like we have to, I mean, I think you'll understand that we're walking in a bit of a tension here of explaining how something happens because we see this. I work with porn addicts all the time, and we want to give you a window into that, but it's easy for us to see how explaining that might be landing for you as like we're justifying or defending or helping you to feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
Kind
And
of
that's,
thing.
not what we're aiming
Well, we're
for.
okay with developing compassion, but it doesn't mean you can't have boundaries.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you're not like
That you're
angry and
you still have the right to be angry.
hurt and
This is unjust, and you have been gaslit and lied to and all these other things. So it's like this, and you know that, like that's all this complex, conflicting emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so hard to untangle. So because everything is compartmentalized and split apart, the process is decompartmentalization or integration. There's no way for this to happen overnight. It requires a very intentional approach. It has to be very deliberate. There's 5 core steps that we go through and talk about. The first part of this is radical honesty. This means moving away from all partial truths, moving away from staggered or trickling out disclosures. The addict has to commit to complete disclosure. And I'm not saying that that means sharing everything, like all the traumatizing details, for example, about what they're watching. But we do want them to expose key things like when and where info, how it was hidden, how it was lied about. And that's a way of melting the walls off the boxes, the secrecy and the lies that kept these things hidden and split. And if you're holding back as an addict any of those small details about what you did, secret accounts, secret profiles on different sites or social media platforms, the box is still sealed to some degree and the barrier remains. So we want to break out all of the lies and all of the secrecy. That's a key first step.
Yeah. And then the second step is identifying triggers. So the addict has to learn to recognize like the exact moment they feel the urge to open that addiction box. What's the feeling? Is it boredom? Is it shame from a bad day at work? Is it even deeper, like a trauma trigger? So once you identify the trigger, you can choose a different path before you head back down into the bunker or open that addiction box. But you have to catch yourself reaching for the door handle of the bunker before you go inside and ask, why am I reaching for this?
Yes, for sure. And to clarify this part too, we're switching a little bit from explaining to the partner how this goes on. We know a lot of times addicts and their partners, addicts in recovery and their partners listen to this stuff together. So I just want to be clear that these are not steps for the partner to take the addict through. They have to take the ownership of their own recovery. But these are tools that can really help break down this splitting problem. So if the first is the radical honesty, and then Verlynda has talked about managing those triggers, the triggers reveal some sort of emotional distress, usually. And so the third part is emotional regulation. What compartmentalization has been doing is the addicts don't usually almost never know how to handle big emotions or big feelings like grief and anxiety. They hide or they bury or they stuff them instead. So recovery involves learning how to sit with discomfort, like sadness, instead of running to the addiction box to numb out. It's about learning to be okay with not being okay. Tolerating difficult emotions is a key part of recovery. And then finding, not only just learning to tolerate them, that you can get through them, but finding healthy ways to take care of those difficult feelings that leave you feeling more whole and connected rather than shameful and disconnected.
Yeah, that's good. So then the fourth step is an external accountability. You cannot break down these walls alone. You have to invite other people into these secret spaces. And so this might be a recovery group or a specialized sponsor. It means giving someone else the right to ask you hard questions about what is happening in those dark corners of your mind. Like, this is not your spouse's job. It needs to be someone who is not personally wounded by your addictive behaviors. Because again, like, transparency is the antidote to compartmentalization.
Yeah.
And if I think I'm going to hurt my spouse, I'm less likely to share those things.
Yeah.
So it needs to be someone kind of one step removed.
Yeah. And finally, the fifth step is professional integration. This is where you work with a specialist like a CSAT, a certified sex addiction therapist, or a trauma-informed counselor who understands pornography addiction. They help you navigate the process of merging your two lives, these compartments, in a way that's safe and structured. It also involves helping the partner heal from the trauma of the discovery while helping the addict build a single unified identity that they can actually be proud of and inhabit and feel good in their own skin with. Ideally, both individuals would be in therapy because if you've only healed one part of the relationship, it's like remodeling only half of your house. Yeah, it's cheaper, but it's obvious that the work is incomplete and it feels out of balance. So ideally, we like to see both partners in therapy.
Yeah. And we want to be honest here, though, and say, like, this process is very difficult. When the walls start coming down, the addict's going to feel a lot of pain. Mm-hmm. They're going to feel the full weight of the guilt they've been avoiding for years. Many addicts try to retreat back into their boxes because the light of reality is like too bright and the shame feels overwhelming.
And for the partner, the challenge is trust. Even when the addict starts being honest, you are likely waiting for the next box to be discovered or for the other shoe to drop. And it takes a long time to feel safe again. And that's why we recommend specific next steps for everyone involved. If you're an addict, you need to seek an experienced recovery counselor who understands the neurobiology of this behavior. Don't try to white knuckle it because your brain is already wired to hide.
Yeah. And for betrayed partners, like, your first step is to find a trauma-informed support for yourself. Like, you need to understand that your feelings of betrayal are completely valid. His compartmentalization explains his behavior, but it does not excuse the impact it had on you. You're not crazy for feeling like something was off. Like, you were picking up on a real psychological wall that he had built.
Yes, so please consider therapeutic support for yourself. Separate from any couples work you might be doing, you need a space to process your own healing and your own anger without having to manage the addict's recovery or their reaction to that at the same time. So we recommend this because him quitting his addiction won't automatically undo the betrayal wounds that you've endured. Yeah. So you also deserve a space where your needs are the primary focus. So to summarize what we've discussed today, compartmentalization is a powerful and destructive mental tool that allows addiction to thrive in secret. It creates a split reality that leaves partners feeling betrayed and addicts feeling isolated in shame. But integration is possible. Bringing the secret life into the light is the only way to find genuine healing and to build a relationship that is based on truth rather than a carefully curated image.
So if this conversation has resonated with you and you're ready to take a gentle next step, we're here to help. You can visit therapivo.com to learn more about our specialized counseling for porn addiction and betrayal trauma. It is all available via Zoom video call. So we've also placed a link in the pinned comment below where you can book a free 20-minute consultation to see if our approach is the right fit for your journey. There's no pressure and no judgment, just a safe space to start moving toward the truth.
Living a unified life where your outside matches your inside is a beautiful thing. It's the foundation of real intimacy and of personal peace. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the mind. Let's keep normalizing therapy together.